Hello and welcome to Government Class. In today's Government Class, we'll be looking at French Colonial Administration in West Africa. Just in line with the scramble for Africa, the history of colonial administration in West Africa largely involves two colonial powers, which are Britain and France. France, like Britain, joined the scramble for Africa. While Britain got Nigeria, Gambia, Sierra Leone, Ghana as territories in West Africa, French acquired some territories in West Africa between the 19th and the 20th century. The countries given to France were Senegal, Ivory Coast, which is now known as Côte d'Ivoire, Dahomey, which is now known as Benin Republic, Mali, Mauritania, Upper Volta, which is now known as Burkina Faso, Niger Republic, and later in 1919, the League of Nations gave Togo to France as a colony. Togo was administered differently from the other colonies of France because Togo was a mandate and it was under the supervision of the League of Nations. In our previous classes, when we're looking at the common terms we'll be coming across in our series of classes, which is colonial administration in Africa, we talked about mandate. A mandate is a country which was given to the League of Nations after the First World War. And because Togo was a mandate, Togo was under the supervision of the League of Nations, and it was the League of Nations that gave Togo to France as a colony. The French colonial administration made use of two systems to administer their rules to their colonial territories. The systems are policy of assimilation and policy of association. The policy of assimilation was only put into use in some parts of Senegal, which were Dakar, St. Louis, Gorée, Rufisque. The term commune was used to describe models of towns and villages in colonies as they were in France. So commune was what was used to describe towns in France, and that was what they used to describe it in their colonies as well. Assimilation was not adopted outside these four communes in Senegal. The next thing we'll be looking at in this class is the administrative structure of French in West Africa. What was the administrative structure of French in West Africa? When we looked at indirect rule in Britain, we looked at the administrative structure, and when we looked at the crown colonies that Britain had in Nigeria, we looked at the administrative structure as well. So in this class, we'll be looking at the administrative structure of French in West Africa. The French system of administration in West Africa was a highly centralized federation of all our territories with the administrative headquarters in Dakar. So what French had in their colonial territories was they brought every of their colonial territories together as a federation, and there was a governor general that headed the federation. So French had a highly centralized federation. The French system of administration in West Africa was a highly centralized federation of all our territories with the administrative headquarters in Dakar. A colonial governor general headed the federation. So what we had in the French colonial administration of West Africa is every of the French colonial territory came together to form what we call a federation. So French brought all of their colonial territories together to form a federation, and that federation was headed by a colonial governor general with the headquarters of the federation in Dakar. So all of French colonial territory became like a nation. So regardless of the different countries and different nations that were there, they were all joined together as a nation, and the administrative headquarters was in Dakar, Senegal. A colonial governor general headed the federation, and each colonial territory was headed by a governor. So at the top of the federation, we have a colonial governor general heading the federation, and as I said earlier, it is the colonial territories of France that came together to form the federation. So each of the colonial territory was headed by a governor. Each colonial territory was headed by a governor, and the governor took directives from the governor general, and the governor general was under the control of the minister of colonies in France. So the governor of each colonial territories, it took directives from the governor general of the federation, and the governor general of the federation was under the control of the minister of colonies in France. France used direct rule system in their local administration to their territories. So they were directly involved in administering their rule to their colonial territory. Each of the territories that France had, they were divided, each of the colonial territories, to make it simpler so that we don't get it mixed up. the colonial territories came together to form the federation. At the top of the federation, we have the governor general, and then each colonial territories on their own, they are headed by a governor. Now, each of these colonial territories as well are divided into what we call circles or provinces, and these circles or provinces were under the control of a person we call the provisional commissioner. So each of the territories, colonial territories, were further divided into circles or provinces, and the circles or provinces were headed by a provisional commissioner. The circles or provinces, they were further divided into canton divisions. Now, the canton divisions were further divided into cantons or villages. So the territories were divided into circles or provinces. Each colonial territory, they were divided into circles or provinces. The circles or provinces were further divided into canton divisions. And now the canton divisions were further divided into villages. The cantons or villages made up what we call the canton division, and they were controlled by the African village headmen or the canton chiefs. So the canton divisions, the canton or villages are what made of what we call the canton division, and the canton division was controlled, and the canton divisions was controlled by district officers, while the canton of villages, or what we call villages, were controlled by African village headmen or canton chiefs. The French adopted a direct rule in their local administration to their colonial territories, and they removed many of the paramount chiefs who resisted the French rule and appointed puppets who were willing to obey the local French officials. So the French system of administration did not use the traditional rulers. They did not use the paramount chiefs, and every chief who resisted their rule, the French rule, they removed the chief, they disposed the chief, and they appointed puppets who were willing to obey the local French officials. Also, under the administrative structure of French in West Africa, in the federation and the colonies were advisory councils. So in the federations and colonies of France, in the federation and the colonies, you would recall that we said the coming together of the colonial territories of France is what forms the federation, and each of those colonial territories as well, they had what we call advisory councils. So in the federation as a whole and in the colonial territories as a body, they had what we call advisory councils. And members of the advisory councils were nominated by the governor general and the governor respectively. So the members of the administrative council in the federation were nominated by the governor general, and the members of the advisory councils for the colonial territories were nominated by the governor respectively. Neither the governor nor governor general were bound to take the advice of the advisory council. So though these people are called the advisory councils, they can only advise. They cannot, the governor general and the governor do not have a right to accept the advice. They could choose to accept the advice or choose not to accept the advice, but this body still existed in the federation and in the colony. But the governors and the governor generals, they are not bound to take the advice of the advisory councils. They could choose to or choose not to take the advice. Educated elites were absorbed in the administration of the colonies. In the administrative structure of French in West Africa, they used a lot of educated elites, unlike what we had in the administrative structure of Britain and Nigeria, where they didn't make use of educated elites. They preferred the illiterate traditional rulers and chiefs. But in what we see in the French structure, in the French administrative structure in West Africa, is educated elites were very much used in this system. They were absorbed in the administration of colonies. And with this, we've come to the end of the class. In the course of this class, we looked at French colonial rule in West Africa. We looked at the administrative structure of French in West Africa. In the next class, we'll be looking at the policy of assimilation, the reasons for the adoption of the policy of assimilation, why the policy of assimilation failed, and we'll be looking at the features of the policies of assimilation as well. I'll see you at the next class.